Jake Miller had been scrubbing floors for 3 years on Station 7, and nobody had ever thanked him once. Not the miners who tracked mud everywhere. Not the engineers who spilled their coffee and walked away. Not even the station manager who barely remembered his name. Jake was invisible, just another guy in a blue jumpsuit pushing a mop around at 3 in the morning while everyone else slept. Station 7 wasn't much to look at. It was a mining outpost stuck on the edge of human territory, on a planet called Kepler 442b that looked like Mars had an uglier cousin. Red rocks, orange sky, and dust that got into everything no matter how many times you cleaned. The work was brutal, the pay was a joke, and the only reason people came here was because they couldn't find work anywhere else. Jake was one of those people. He'd been a teacher back on Earth, believe it or not. History. He loved it. But when the schools started closing and the jobs dried up, he took the first off-world contract he could find. They said it would be temporary. That was 3 years ago. Now he was 32 years old, single, broke, and his biggest accomplishment each night was getting the cafeteria floor clean enough that it didn't stick to people's boots. That particular Tuesday started like every other night. Jake clocked in at midnight, grabbed his cleaning cart, and started his rounds. Bathrooms first, then the hallways, then the cafeteria. Around 2 in the morning, he had to take the trash out to the disposal site, which was basically a big canyon behind the station where they dumped everything that couldn't be recycled. It was a 20-minute walk in the dark, and Jake hated it, but it was part of the job. He was dragging 3 bags of garbage down the rocky path when he heard it. A sound like nothing he'd ever heard before. Low, rumbling, almost like an engine failing, but with something alive in it. Something in pain. Jake froze. Station 7 didn't have any large animals. Hell, it barely had any small ones. The most dangerous thing out here was usually falling rocks or the occasional dust storm. But this sound made every hair on his neck stand up. He should have dropped the trash and run back to the station. That's what any smart person would do. But Jake had never been great at doing the smart thing, and besides, something about that sound got to him. It wasn't aggressive. It was hurting. He set down the trash bags and followed the sound around a cluster of big boulders. That's when he saw it, and his brain just kind of stopped working for a second. It was huge. Easily as big as the transport shuttles they used to move ore. It had scales that shimmered blue and silver even in the dim light from Station 7's external floods. A long serpentine body, full legs with claws that could probably cut through steel, and wings. Massive wings, except one of them was torn to shreds, hanging at a wrong angle. And there was blood everywhere, this weird dark gold color that seemed to glow faintly in the dark. A dragon. Jake's brain supplied the word even though it made no sense. Dragons weren't real. But there it was, wedged between 2 rock formations, breathing hard, its huge eyes watching him with an intelligence that made his stomach flip. Those eyes were the worst part. They weren't animal eyes. They were person eyes. Scared. Hurting. Aware. Jake's hands were shaking. His first thought was to run. His second thought was that if this thing wanted to kill him, he was already dead. His third thought was that it looked like how he'd felt after his car accident 5 years ago, trapped and bleeding and terrified. He took a step forward. The dragon's head lifted slightly, and Jake saw its muscles tense. He stopped, held up his hands. "Hey," he said, his voice cracking. "Hey, it's okay. I'm not gonna hurt you." Stupid thing to say to something that could eat him in one bite, but Jake kept talking anyway. His mom always said he talked too much when he was nervous. "You're hurt pretty bad, huh? That wing looks awful. Who did this to you?" He took another step. The dragon didn't move this time, just watched him with those impossibly intelligent eyes. Jake could see its chest heaving, could see the pain in the way it held itself. He was close now, close enough to smell it. It didn't smell bad, just strange, like ozone and something sweet he couldn't place. He could see the worst wound, a deep gash along its side that was leaking that glowing gold blood. Jake's water bottle was clipped to his belt. He'd filled it at the start of his shift, and it was supposed to last him until 8 in the morning. It was all he had. He unclipped it slowly and held it out. "You thirsty? You look thirsty." The dragon stared at the bottle. Then at Jake. Then back at the bottle. Finally, slowly, it lowered its massive head. Jake's hands were shaking so bad he almost dropped the bottle, but he managed to pour water into his cupped palm and hold it out. The dragon's tongue was forked, he noticed randomly. It lapped at the water carefully, almost gently. Jake refilled his palm again and again until the bottle was empty. Then he did something even crazier. He pulled off his jacket and pressed it against the worst wound, trying to stop the bleeding. He had a first aid kit back at his cleaning cart. It wasn't designed for dragons, but it was something. It took him 40 minutes to hike back to his cart and return. The whole time he was terrified the dragon would be gone, or worse, dead. But it was still there, still watching him with those eyes. Jake spent the next 3 hours doing everything he could think of. He used an entire tube of industrial adhesive on the wing, trying to hold the torn membrane together. He wrapped the side wound with gauze and duct tape, so much duct tape. He talked the whole time, rambling about nothing, about his job and his life and how weird this all was. The dragon let him work. Never growled, never threatened. Just watched him and occasionally made that low rumbling sound, which Jake decided was probably like a cat purring. When the sky started turning lighter, the dragon shifted. It struggled to its feet, testing the injured wing. Jake stepped back, giving it space. It looked at him one more time, and Jake could have sworn it nodded. Then it launched itself into the air with a sound like thunder, flying awkwardly but flying, disappearing into the orange dawn sky. Jake stood there alone in the canyon, covered in gold dragon blood and dust, his water bottle empty and his first aid kit destroyed. He looked at his watch. He'd missed half his shift. His supervisor was going to be furious. But Jake was smiling. He'd just saved a dragon. An actual dragon. Nobody would ever believe him, and he'd probably get written up for abandoning his post, but he'd saved something magnificent and ancient and beautiful. He walked back to the station, threw away the trash he'd forgotten about, and clocked out. He told no one. What could he even say? Besides, who cared what a janitor did on his night shift anyway? 3 days later, everything changed. 3 days went by, and Jake tried to convince himself it had all been some kind of hallucination. Maybe he'd been working too many double shifts. Maybe the air recyclers were leaking something weird and he'd just imagined the whole thing. But every time he closed his eyes, he saw those intelligent dragon eyes staring back at him. He'd gone back to the canyon twice, looking for proof. Some scales, some of that glowing gold blood, anything. But there was nothing. Just rocks and dust and the usual garbage. Like it never happened. On the 4th day, Jake was in the middle of his shift, mopping the main corridor around 2 in the afternoon, when every alarm in Station 7 started screaming at once. Emergency sirens, proximity alerts, the works. The kind of noise that meant either a meteor was about to hit them or someone had really screwed up. People started running. Miners dropped their tools. Engineers abandoned their stations. Everyone was heading to the windows, and Jake heard someone yelling about the sensors going crazy. He followed the crowd to the observation deck, his mop still in his hand because he didn't know what else to do with it. When he got there, the room was packed with about 50 people, all staring out the reinforced windows at the sky. Except there was no sky anymore. There was just ship. Jake's brain couldn't even process the size of it at first. It was like trying to understand the ocean when you'd only ever seen pictures. The thing was massive, bigger than Station 7, bigger than the colony ships that had brought humans out here, bigger than anything Jake had ever seen or imagined. And it was just sitting there in orbit, blocking out the sun, casting the entire station in shadow. It didn't look like any human ship. Human ships were all hard angles and practical design, built for function over form. This thing looked alive somehow. Smooth curves mixed with crystal structures that caught the light and threw it back in colors that didn't seem quite real. There were patterns on the hull that might have been writing or decoration or something else entirely. The station manager, a nervous guy named Peterson, was on the comm system trying to hail the ship. His voice was shaking. Unidentified vessel, this is Station 7. Please state your intentions. We are a civilian mining operation. We're not armed. Please respond. Static. Then every speaker in the station crackled to life at once, and a voice spoke. It was translated into English, but you could hear something else underneath it, something that sounded like music and thunder at the same time. We seek the human called Jake Miller. The room went dead silent. 50 pairs of eyes turned to look at Jake. He felt his stomach drop into his boots. Peterson's face went from nervous to furious in about 2 seconds. Miller? What the hell did you do? Jake's mouth opened but nothing came out. What could he say? I helped a dragon sounded insane even in his own head. 2 security guys grabbed his arms, and suddenly Jake was being marched down to the command center while Peterson shouted questions at him. Had he stolen something? Had he sabotaged an alien vessel? Did he have any idea what kind of position he'd put the entire station in? The truth was, Jake had no idea. He was a janitor. The most exciting thing he'd done in 3 years was unclog a toilet on level 3. And now there was a ship the size of a small moon in orbit asking for him by name. They shoved him into a chair in the command center, and Peterson was right in his face. "Start talking, Miller. Right now. What did you do?" Before Jake could answer, the hologram projector activated on its own. That wasn't supposed to be possible. The projector was controlled by the station's computer, and it had multiple security locks. But it turned on anyway, and a figure materialized in the center of the room. She was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Humanoid, but obviously not human. Her skin had scales that shifted colors like oil on water, flowing from blue to green to purple. Her eyes glowed amber, no pupils, just that burning golden light. She wore something that might have been armor or might have been part of her body, Jake couldn't tell. And she radiated power. Not in a flashy way, but in the way the ocean is powerful. Ancient. Vast. Unstoppable. Everyone in the command center took a step back except Jake, who was stuck in his chair. The figure looked around the room with those glowing eyes, then focused on Jake. She smiled, and Jake saw that her teeth were just a little too sharp. "I am Lady Kyra of the Draken Empire," she said, and her voice made the walls vibrate slightly. "First of the Fire Court, guardian of the Eastern Reaches, and matriarch of the sovereign clans. 3 days ago, my son Prince Thorin was ambushed by our enemies while on his maturity journey. He was left to die on this world, far from home and aid." She paused, and her expression softened slightly. "He would have died. But a human found him. A human with no weapons, no power, no reason to risk himself. This human gave my son water from his own ration. He tended my son's wounds with primitive tools and his own clothing. He asked for nothing. Expected nothing. He simply helped because it was needed." Jake felt everyone staring at him again. Peterson's mouth was hanging open. "The Draken do not forget such debts," Lady Kyra continued. "We are the oldest civilization in this galaxy. We have seen empires rise and fall. We have power beyond your imagining. And we owe this human a life debt." She turned her full attention to Jake. "Jake Miller. I have come to honor that debt. Name your price. Wealth? Technology? Power? Anything within my ability to grant is yours." The room was so quiet Jake could hear his own heartbeat. Every person in there was holding their breath. Some were looking at him with awe. Others with jealousy. Peterson looked like he might have a heart attack. Jake swallowed hard. His throat was dry. "I just helped someone who was hurt. That's all. He needed help, so I helped. I don't want anything." Lady Kyra tilted her head, studying him like he was the most interesting thing she'd seen in 1,000 years. "Your species is strange to me, Jake Miller. You have no telepathy like the Mindwalkers. No combat prowess like the KRYNN warriors. No technology to rival the Builders. You are soft, short-lived, fragile. Yet you risk yourself for a stranger. Why?" Jake thought about it. Really thought about it. "Because that's what people do," he said finally. "Or what they should do, anyway. You see someone hurting, you help if you can. Doesn't matter who they are or what they can do for you. It's just being decent." Something flickered across Lady Kyra's face. Surprise maybe. Or respect. "Then what can I do to honor this debt? There must be something." Jake thought about Station 7. About the raids they'd been having lately from the KRYNN Dominion. About how scared everyone was. "Could you protect this station? We've been having trouble with raiders, and we're not military. We're just trying to make a living out here." Lady Kyra nodded slowly. "This I can do. But Jake Miller, this small request tells me there is a larger problem. Give me time to investigate. I suspect there is more happening here than random raids." The hologram faded, and the room exploded with noise. Everyone was talking at once. Peterson was trying to ask Jake a million questions. Someone was calling military command. It was chaos. Jake just sat there, feeling numb. He'd helped a dragon, and now the oldest power in the galaxy owed him a favor. His quiet life was definitely over. The next 48 hours were the strangest of Jake's life, and that was saying something considering he just met a dragon and an alien empress in the same week. Lady Kyra's ship stayed in orbit, and suddenly Station 7 went from being the forgotten backwater nobody cared about to the center of galactic attention. Military vessels from 3 different human fleets showed up. Diplomats arrived on emergency shuttles. News crews tried to bribe their way onto the station. Everyone wanted to know what was happening, and more importantly, everyone wanted to talk to Jake. The station manager Peterson had gone from yelling at Jake to treating him like he was made of glass. They moved him out of his tiny sleeping cube into one of the guest quarters. Someone brought him actual food instead of the usual protein paste. People who'd never even looked at him before were suddenly trying to be his best friend. Jake hated every second of it. On the second day, Lady Kyra returned. This time she didn't just send a hologram. She came in person, and she brought her son. The transport ship that landed on the station's dock was small compared to the mothership, but it was still the most advanced piece of technology most people there had ever seen. When the doors opened, Lady Kyra stepped out first, and everyone in the docking bay took an involuntary step backward. She was even more imposing in person, easily 7 feet tall, moving with a grace that didn't seem quite real. Behind her came Prince Thorin, and Jake felt his breath catch. It was the dragon. Except now he was in a humanoid form, young-looking but with those same intelligent eyes Jake remembered. He had blue-silver scales along his arms and neck, and when he moved, you could see the power coiled in him. He was wearing some kind of formal outfit that probably cost more than Jake would make in 10 lifetimes. And across his side, visible through a gap in his clothing, was a scar. The same wound Jake had patched up with duct tape and industrial adhesive. Prince Thorin walked straight to Jake, and the crowd parted like water. He stopped in front of Jake and did something that made everyone gasp. He bowed. Deep and formal. "You saved my life," Thorin said, and his voice was younger than his mother's but had that same musical quality. "I was dying, and you gave me your water. Your only water. You tended my wounds with your primitive tools and your own clothing. You asked nothing. Expected nothing. I will never forget this." Jake felt his face burning. "I just did what anyone would do." "No," Lady Kyra said, stepping forward. "That is where you are wrong, Jake Miller. 47 beings passed my son before you found him. 47. Some were more advanced than humans. Some had medical technology that could have saved him easily. Not one stopped. Not one helped. You were the only one." Jake felt sick. 47 people just walked past him. "They saw him as a threat," Thorin said quietly. "Or as something not their problem. You saw me as someone in pain who needed help." Lady Kyra gestured, and one of her attendants brought forward a case. Inside was something that glowed with soft blue light, geometric and beautiful and clearly worth a fortune. "This is a stellar credit core," she said. "It contains enough wealth to purchase 3 planetary systems. It is yours." Jake stared at it. 3 planets. He could never work again. Could buy anything. Go anywhere. His family back on Earth would never struggle again. He shook his head. "I can't take that." The room went silent. Lady Kyra's eyes narrowed. "You refuse?" "I didn't help your son for money. I helped him because he needed help. If I take payment for that, it makes it something else. Makes it a transaction. That's not what it was." Lady Kyra studied him for a long moment. Then, to everyone's surprise, she smiled. "You honor us with your refusal. But the debt remains. Let me offer something else." She waved her hand, and a hologram appeared showing schematics. Technology that made the human engineers in the room gasp. "This is a medical regenerator. It can heal any wound, cure any disease, extend lifespans by centuries. With this technology, your species could eliminate suffering. It is yours." Jake looked at the technology. Saw the hope in people's eyes around him. Then he thought about what would happen. Who would control it? Who would decide who got to use it? Would it go to everyone, or just the rich? Would it help people, or would it become another way to divide them? "I can't accept that either," Jake said quietly. "I'm just a janitor. I don't have the right to make that choice for my whole species. That's too big." Lady Kyra's expression shifted to something like wonder. "You are offered godlike power and refuse it out of humility. You are a strange being, Jake Miller." "Can I ask you something?" Jake said. "Anything. Why does the debt matter so much to you? You could have just said thank you and left." Lady Kyra was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer. "My people are ancient, Jake Miller. We have lived for millions of your years. We have power that could crack planets. We have seen civilizations rise and fall like waves on a shore. And in all that time, we have learned one truth above all others." She looked around at everyone listening. "Power fades. Technology becomes obsolete. Empires crumble. But kindness, compassion, the choice to help another being when you have nothing to gain, that is the rarest and most valuable thing in the universe. That is what holds civilization together. Without it, all the power in the galaxy is meaningless." She turned back to Jake. "You have something my people value above everything. You have a good heart. That is worth more than all the wealth and power I offered you." Jake felt uncomfortable with everyone staring at him like he was some kind of hero. I'm not special. Any decent person would have done the same thing. But they did not, Thorin said firmly. 4 to 7 others did not. You did. That makes you special. Lady Kyra nodded. You asked only that I protect this station. This I will do gladly. But in investigating the raids, I have discovered something troubling. Something that affects not just this station, but your entire species. The human military commander stepped forward. What have you found? Lady Kyra's expression hardened. The attack on my son was not random chance. It was planned. Calculated. The KRYNN Dominion had intelligence about his route, about his timing, about everything. Someone gave them that information. Someone on the Galactic Council. Murmurs of shock rippled through the crowd. More than that, she continued, the KRYNN chose to ambush him here, on a human world, specifically. They believed no human would be capable of helping him, or would care to try. They were wrong, but their assumption tells us something important. You are being underestimated. Worse, you are being targeted. The commander's face went pale. Targeted how? My intelligence network has been dormant for 3,000 years, but it is still the most sophisticated in the galaxy. I have activated it. What I found is a conspiracy that goes to the highest levels of galactic power. Several elder species see humanity as a threat. Not because you are strong, but because you are unpredictable. You make friends across species boundaries. You question the old power structures. You adapt and innovate faster than any species they have seen. Jake felt cold. So they want us gone? Some want you controlled. Others want you eliminated before you become powerful enough to challenge their authority. The raids on human colonies are not random. They are tests. Probing your defenses. Measuring your responses. Preparing for something larger. Lady Kyra looked at Jake. You saved my son, and in doing so, you may have saved your species. Because now you have an ally those elder races cannot ignore. Now you have the Draken. The room erupted. The military commander was shouting questions. Diplomats were arguing. Everyone had opinions. Jake just stood there, thinking about how 3 days ago his biggest concern was getting the cafeteria floor clean. Now he was somehow in the middle of an interstellar conspiracy. He looked at Lady Kyra. What happens now? She smiled, fierce and determined. Now, Jake Miller, we change the galaxy. Lady Kyra invited Jake and a small group of human leaders aboard her ship. Jake had never been on an alien vessel before, and honestly, he'd never really wanted to. He liked keeping his feet on solid ground. But this wasn't exactly optional anymore. The transport shuttle that took them up was smoother than any human craft Jake had been on. No rattling, no engine noise, just a gentle sensation of movement. When they docked with the main ship, Jake stepped out into a corridor that made his brain hurt trying to understand it. The walls seemed to shift and flow like liquid, but when he touched them, they were solid. Lights moved through the material like fish swimming through water. Everything was curved and organic, nothing like the straight lines and right angles of human engineering. Prince Thorin was their guide, leading them deeper into the ship. Jake walked beside him, still feeling weird about the whole situation. A week ago he'd been taping up this guy's wing with duct tape. Now he was being escorted through the most advanced ship in the galaxy. Does it hurt? Jake asked, nodding at the scar on Thorin's side. Thorin touched it briefly. Sometimes. But I wear it with pride. It reminds me that I survived because of kindness, not strength. That is a valuable lesson for a prince. They arrived at what Thorin called the intelligence chamber, which was basically a massive room filled with holographic displays showing star maps, data streams, and images of different species and planets. Lady Kyra was already there, along with several other Draken who all had that same otherworldly presence. The human delegation consisted of Commander Hayes from the military, Ambassador Chen from the diplomatic corps, and Dr. Patricia Wells, a xenopolitics specialist. And Jake, because apparently saving a dragon prince meant you got invited to classified briefings now. Lady Kyra gestured to the displays. What I am about to show you is the result of 72 hours of intelligence gathering. My people have networks throughout the galaxy that have been dormant for millennia. We activated them to investigate the attack on my son. What we found is worse than we anticipated. The holographic display shifted, showing a timeline. 6 months ago, the KRYNN Dominion began increased raids on human territory. Your military assumed these were opportunistic attacks. They were not. They were coordinated tests of your defensive capabilities, response times, and technological limitations. Commander Hayes leaned forward. We suspected coordination, but we couldn't prove it. Because you were looking in the wrong places, Lady Kyra said. The KRYNN are being supplied with weapons and intelligence by 3 elder species on the Galactic Council. The Veldran Collective, the Ocean Commonwealth, and the Thol Hierarchy. Ambassador Chen looked shocked. Those are council members. They're supposed to maintain peace and stability. They maintain their own power, one of the other Draken said, his voice deep and rumbling. And your species threatens that power. Lady Kyra pulled up images of human colonies, trade routes, diplomatic missions. Humans have been in galactic society for only 40 years. In that time, you have established trade relationships with 17 species, many of whom were previously isolated or marginalized. You share technology freely. You intermarry with other species. You question why the Council makes the decisions it does. Dr. Wells was nodding slowly. We're disrupting the social order. More than that, Lady Kyra said. You are showing other species that the old hierarchies are not inevitable. The elder races have maintained control for thousands of years by keeping younger species dependent and divided. Humans refuse to stay in their assigned place. Jake spoke up, feeling out of his depth but needing to understand. So they decided to get rid of us. Not all of them, Thorin said. The council is divided. Some see humans as a curiosity. Others see you as a threat. The 3 species my mother mentioned are in the latter category. They have been quietly supporting the KRYNN raids, hoping to weaken humanity enough that you withdraw from galactic affairs or are destroyed entirely. The hologram shifted again, showing the star system where Thorin had been attacked. The ambush on Prince Thorin was part of this plan. The KRYNN received intelligence about his route from a Veldran intelligence operative. They chose to attack him here, in human territory, for 2 reasons. Lady Kyra's eyes blazed. First, because they believed humans were too primitive to help him, ensuring his death. Second, because if a Draken Prince died in human space, it would create an incident. We would investigate. We would discover human incompetence or indifference. It would justify marginalizing your species further. But Jake helped him, Commander Hayes said slowly. So their plan backfired. Spectacularly, Lady Kyra agreed. Not only did a human save my son, but he did so with nothing but basic supplies and compassion. It proves everything the elder races fear about your species. That you are unpredictable. That you act on principle rather than calculation. That you build bridges instead of walls. Jake felt sick. So I accidentally made things worse? Now they're going to come after us harder? No, Lady Kyra said firmly. Now they must face the consequences of their actions. Because the Draken do not forget, and we do not forgive attempts to murder our children for political gain. She pulled up another display, this one showing communication intercepts and financial records. My people have gathered evidence of the conspiracy. Weapon shipments traced back to Ocean manufacturers. Intelligence briefings leaked from Veldran operatives. Financial transfers from the Thol hierarchy to KRYNN warlords. It is all documented. Ambassador Chen was reading through the data, his face growing paler by the second. This is enough to bring charges before the entire Galactic Council. It could tear apart the Alliance. The Alliance is already broken, Dr. Wells said quietly. This just proves it. Lady Kyra turned to face the humans directly. I am prepared to offer humanity a formal alliance with the Draken Empire. Our protection, our technology, our support in galactic politics. With us as your ally, the elder races cannot move against you openly. Commander Hayes looked like someone had just offered him everything he'd ever wanted. That would change everything. Would finally have a seat at the table. But there is a cost, Lady Kyra continued. The moment we formalize this alliance, you become a target. Not through proxy raids, but through political pressure, economic sanctions, perhaps even direct conflict. The elder races have maintained power for thousands of years. They will not surrender it easily. The room went quiet. Jake could see the humans processing this. It was basically a choice between staying small and safe, or taking a risk that could either elevate humanity or destroy it. Why are you doing this? Jake asked Lady Kyra. I mean, I get that your son's life is important, but this is huge. You're risking your own position in the galaxy to help us. Lady Kyra smiled at him. Because, Jake Miller, my people have been watching the galaxy for a very long time. We have seen countless civilizations come and go. Most of them fell not because they were weak, but because they forgot why civilization matters in the first place. They became obsessed with power, with control, with maintaining their position. She gestured to the star maps surrounding them. Humanity reminds us of what we once were. Young, idealistic, believing that problems can be solved through cooperation rather than domination. You are naive in many ways, yes. But you are also exactly what this galaxy needs. Thorin stepped forward. My mother withdrew our people from galactic politics 3,000 years ago because we were disgusted by what the Council had become. A tool for the powerful to maintain power, nothing more. We have been waiting for a reason to return. Jake gave us that reason. Jake looked at the prince. I just gave you some water, man. I didn't start a revolution. The greatest changes often begin with the smallest acts, Lady Kyra said. A human janitor saw someone suffering and helped, expecting nothing in return. That simple act of compassion has exposed a conspiracy, revealed the corruption at the heart of galactic government, and given the oppressed species hope that change is possible. She looked at each of the humans in turn. The question now is what you will do with this opportunity. Will you accept our alliance knowing the risks? Will you help us expose the conspiracy and reform the council? Or will you choose safety and allow things to continue as they are? Commander Hayes, Ambassador Chen, and Dr. Wells looked at each other. They were clearly way above Jake's pay grade in this discussion, but they seemed to be waiting for something. Finally, Ambassador Chen spoke. We need to consult with Earth government, with the colonial administration, with our allies. This decision affects billions of people. Of course, Lady Kyra said. Take what time you need. But understand that the conspiracy will not wait. Even now, the KRYNN are preparing for larger attacks. The evidence we have gathered will only remain secret for so long. Jake felt the weight of it all pressing down on him. Somehow, giving a dragon some water had turned into an interstellar crisis that could reshape the entire galaxy. He missed mopping floors. At least floors made sense. But looking at the evidence, at the proof of species working together to keep humanity down, Jake felt something else too. Anger. Determination. The same feeling he'd had when he decided to help Thorin instead of running away. Some things were worth the risk. Some things, you just had to do because they were right. The next 2 weeks were chaos. The human government back on Earth was split right down the middle. Half wanted to accept Lady Kyra's alliance immediately. The other half thought it was too dangerous, that humanity should keep its head down and wait until they were stronger. News of the conspiracy had leaked somehow, and suddenly every human colony was talking about it. People were scared, angry, and confused. Jake got pulled into more meetings than he could count. Generals wanted his opinion. Politicians wanted him to make speeches. News crews wanted interviews. Everyone seemed to think that because he'd saved Prince Thorin, he had some special insight into what humanity should do. He didn't. He was still just a janitor who'd done the right thing and accidentally stumbled into the middle of galactic politics. But during one particularly frustrating meeting where everyone was talking in circles, Jake finally snapped. They were in a conference room on Station 7, connected via video link to Earth and 3 other major colonies. Commander Hayes was arguing with some admiral Jake didn't know. Ambassador Chen was trying to mediate. Dr. Wells was pulling up data that nobody was looking at. And everyone was so focused on risks and political calculations that they'd forgotten what this was actually about. Can I say something? Jake asked. The room went quiet. Everyone turned to look at him. I've been listening to all of you talk for 2 weeks now, Jake said, and I keep hearing the same things. It's too risky. We're not ready. We should wait. We might make powerful enemies. And yeah, all of that is probably true. But you're missing the point. Admiral Richardson on the video screen frowned. What point is that, Mr. Miller? Jake stood up, feeling his hands shake but pushing through anyway. We didn't come out here to the stars just to survive. My grandparents were part of the first colony wave. You know what they told me before they died? They said they left Earth because they believed humanity could be better. Could do better. Could build something worth building. He looked around the room. Right now, there are species out there being oppressed by the same elder races that are trying to keep us down. There are civilizations that want to do the right thing but are too scared to stand up alone. And we have a choice. We can hide, keep our heads down, hope they leave us alone. Or we can stand up and say this isn't right. It's not that simple, Ambassador Chen said gently. Yeah, it is, Jake insisted. Look, I'm not a politician or a general. I'm a guy who mops floors. But I know what it's like to be powerless. To feel like you don't matter. To have people look right through you like you're invisible. That's how we've been treated in the galaxy since we showed up. Like we're nothing. He thought about Thorin, bleeding in that canyon. When I found Prince Thorin, I could have walked away. It would have been safer. Smarter, probably. But I didn't, because that's not who I want to be. And if we walk away from this now, if we choose safety over doing what's right, then what's the point of any of it? Dr. Wells was nodding slowly. He's right. We've spent 40 years trying to prove we belong in galactic society. Maybe it's time to prove we can change it for the better. Commander Hayes rubbed his face. The military is split. Half my officers want to fight. The other half think we'll get slaughtered. We might, Jake admitted. But we won't be alone. Lady Kyra said there are other species who feel the same way we do. Maybe it's time to stop thinking about what humanity can do alone and start thinking about what we can do together. The discussion went on for hours after that, but something had shifted. People were talking about possibilities instead of just risks. About what could go right instead of only what could go wrong. 3 days later, Earth government made its decision. They would accept the Draken Alliance, but they'd do it Jake's way. Not as a power grab, but as the foundation for something bigger. They'd reach out to the other marginalized species, build a real coalition, and use the evidence Lady Kyra had gathered to expose the conspiracy to the entire galaxy. It was ambitious. Maybe crazy. But it was also very human. Lady Kyra was pleased when they told her. You understand what you are starting? She asked the assembled human leaders. A war? Commander Hayes suggested. A revolution, Lady Kyra corrected. You are not just defending humanity. You are challenging the entire structure of galactic power. This will be remembered for millennia, one way or another. Prince Thorin stepped forward. I wish to be part of this. My mother agrees. I will serve as liaison between our peoples and help coordinate with other species. Over the next month, things moved fast. Lady Kyra used her networks to quietly contact other species that had been marginalized by the Council. The Mindo Collective, who'd been denied voting rights for centuries. The Paran Federation, who'd been economically exploited. The Zell Commonwealth, whose colonies had been seized by elder races. Dozens of civilizations who were tired of being controlled. They met in secret, on neutral ground. And when Prince Thorin told them his story about a human janitor who'd saved his life expecting nothing in return, it resonated. Here was proof that the powerful could be challenged. That kindness mattered more than strength. That the old rules didn't have to apply anymore. The coalition grew. Then came the day they went public. Prince Thorin appeared before the Galactic Council in person for the first time in 3,000 years. Lady Kyra was with him, and so was a human delegation led by Ambassador Chen. And Jake, because Thorin had insisted. The council chamber was massive, filled with representatives from hundreds of species. Jake felt tiny standing there, but he kept his head up. Thorin told his story. He showed his scar. He explained how he'd been ambushed and left to die, and how a human with nothing had saved him. Then Lady Kyra presented the evidence. Every weapons shipment. Every intelligence leak. Every financial transfer. The proof of the conspiracy laid out for everyone to see. The council erupted. Accusations flew. The 3 elder species tried to deny everything, but the evidence was overwhelming. And more importantly, 60 other species stood up together and demanded change. Demanded real representation. Demanded an end to the system that kept power concentrated in the hands of a few. It wasn't smooth. There were threats. Economic sanctions. 2 of the elder races pulled their fleets back to their home systems in protest. The KRYNN Dominion launched one final desperate attack on a human colony, but Draken ships were there to stop them. The battle was over in minutes. The galaxy was changing, and there was no going back. 6 months later, Jake was back on Station 7. The place looked different now. There were more people, more ships coming and going. The station had become a hub for the new coalition, a symbol of where it all started. Jake had been offered a dozen promotions. Admiral positions. Diplomatic posts. Even a seat on the new reformed Galactic Council. He'd turned them all down. He liked his life simple. So he went back to the night shift. Back to mopping floors and taking out trash. He was in the canyon behind the station, the same place he'd found Thorin, when he heard a ship land nearby. It was small, battered, making concerning noises. The hatch opened, and an alien stumbled out. Jake didn't recognize the species. It was insectoid, with too many legs and compound eyes that reflected the station lights. Green blood was leaking from a gash in its thorax. It collapsed against a rock, breathing hard. Jake sighed, set down his trash bags, and grabbed his first aid kit from his cart. He'd started carrying a bigger one now, just in case. And extra water bottles. He walked over slowly, hands visible, speaking softly. "Hey there. Looks like you're having a bad day. Let me help you out." The alien's translator kicked in, turning its chittering into words. "You are human? The human who saved the prince." Jake knelt down and started examining the wound. "Yeah, that's me. But right now I'm just a guy with a first aid kit. Hold still, this might sting." As he worked, cleaning and bandaging the wound, Jake thought about how weird his life had become. How one choice to help someone had snowballed into a galactic revolution. How the most powerful civilization in the galaxy now considered humans their allies. How the galaxy was being reformed because a janitor had shared his water. But mostly, he thought about how none of that really changed what mattered. You saw someone who needed help, you helped them. Simple as that. The alien was watching him with those compound eyes. "Why help me? You do not know me." Jake smiled. "Don't need to know you. You're hurt. I can help. That's enough." The alien made a sound that might have been laughter or crying, Jake couldn't tell. "The galaxy is changing because of beings like you." "Nah," Jake said, taping up the last of the bandage. "The galaxy is changing because a lot of beings decided it was time. I just gave some water to a dragon. Everything else was people choosing to be brave." He helped the alien back to its ship, made sure it could fly okay, and watched it take off into the orange sky. Then he went back to his trash bags. He had a shift to finish. And somewhere out in the galaxy, dozens of species were learning that the most powerful force in the universe wasn't weapons or technology or ancient empires. It was ordinary people choosing to do the right thing, even when it cost them something. Especially then. Jake smiled and headed back to the station. His supervisor was probably wondering where he was. Some things, he figured, never changed. And that was okay. That was just fine.